introduce Steve Frank, who is the editor of California News and Political Review. No, I didn't say that right. California News and Political Review. Is that right, Steve?
California Political News and Views.
Political News and Views. You know what I just realized? Your website has completely different stuff than your email. So you got to check out, guys, you got to subscribe to the email and you got to check out the website because he's got different material. He has a good article there about Kamala when I checked in on the website today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. And are you going to start hopefully with this Communist Party invasion here with CalPERS?
Absolutely. That was the top story in my newsletter today, which is something I've been talking about for many weeks and months, that the Communist Party literally had put into the chief investment office one of their people who went through their 10,000 talents program. And then CalPERS hired this guy. And now one of the first things he did as a investment officer for CalPERS was to invest a little over $5 billion of our retirees' money into firms owned by the Chinese Communist Party military to help finance the military of China. And that was one of the first things he did. And it was noted by me and by others that the firms that he invested in were the same firms that were blacklisted by the U.S. Treasury Department as illegal for any American to invest in. And this guy wasn't just any American. He was the investment officer for the largest pension system in the country using our retirees' money. Now, the untold story about this is why in the world would he resign? He's been there about a year and a half. Fox News said one of the reasons he resigned is that his return on investments was so small and so low that he didn't meet his goals. But I think there was a different reason for it, a more important reason. Ever since it came out that the Chinese Communist Party got this guy this job at CalPERS, the FBI has been investigating him. And I would not be surprised if I picked up a newspaper tomorrow morning and he's been indicted for treason and sedition, helping the Chinese Communist Party weaken the American economic system by weakening the CalPERS system, which already was weak because of his own incompetence and mismanagement. And so I think there's more to the story. And I do believe he's going to, I know that he's being investigated right now from the FBI. And I think they're going to do something. You may have noticed in the newspaper over the last few weeks, I've reported on a few of these, a professor at UCLA, a professor at UC Davis, a professor at Ohio State University, a professor in a Vermont college, all have been arrested on treason and sedition as being agents of the Chinese Communist Party working in our academic situation on the college campuses of America and not reporting that they were agents of a foreign government. And the FBI is on the trail of all of these people. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 230 professors around the country that they are investigating at this time. One college, I think was in Connecticut, last week is being forced to give back somewhere between $3 and $8 million donated by what they call a straw man, donated by a wealthy Chinese citizen who actually did it on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. And that money has to go back to China. That person is being investigated and I believe has been arrested. And so we are in the midst of a massive, just massive crackdown by the FBI of Chinese Communist takeover of our campuses, and with Meng, guy's name is Yu Meng, with him being an agent of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I should mention that as he went through a training program at a company, a nonprofit called 10,000 Jobs, 10,000 talents. They have put their graduates into U.S. corporations all over the country. So I would suspect those people are also being investigated. There's also a question about Maine, who I understand is a graduate of Stanford University. The question comes out, who paid for his tuition at Stanford? And they're looking into the source of the money because his parents didn't have that money. So where did the money come from to pay for it? So there's a lot going on just here in California and nationally with the FBI going after the Chinese Communist Party. And as you may know, overnight, the president has taken away special trade status from both Red China, and I will use the old-fashioned name, Red China, and from Hong Kong, which used to be a free nation and now is just a slave state of the People's Republic of China. So things are going on international level, but they affect us here in California. Now I'd like to turn a little bit to a fun piece of information. A little while ago, I think it was Jan, made mention that Scott Wiener had some bills on housing, which he does, and they are terrible bills. And you would think that a guy with his background would easily win re-election and certainly have the support of the labor union movement in California. 2 days ago, the AFL-CIO in California, the California AFL-CIO, took away their endorsement of him because one of his bills, which takes away your right to have local zoning and permitting and allows buildings, as Jan mentioned, to be built in your backyard in a three-bedroom, two-bath community. You could put up to 8-unit apartments, but in his bill he doesn't say only union labor. And because he didn't say only union labor, the unions have taken away their endorsement of the guy. So what's going on within the union movement, and when you look at what's going on with the socialists, the BML movement, the Marxist BML movement, the regressives like Sanders and AOC taking on Democrats in primaries who aren't as socialist and communistic as they are. This is a national trend. Inside the Democrat Party, they're having implosions. They're having a fight. They're having a meltdown. So while we in the Republican Party are used to the fact that we fight between conservatives and moderates and liberals, the Democrats now have to fight between Democrats and anti-Democrats who are registered as Democrats. And we see this in New York, where AOC beat a longtime congressman in the the June primary in New York. Elliot Engel lost his seat. And there's been 2 or 3 in Illinois, a Democrat, in St. Louis, Congressman Bill Lacey Clay, who's been there for over 20 years, and his father was there 20 years before that, lost his seat to a socialist Democrat endorsed by AOC. And so we're seeing this all over the country, that the Democrat Party is having their own battles. And this is good for us if we understand how to use the fight in between the Democrat parties to help us win in general elections in November. That's a good thing. Now, let's turn a little bit to the legislation that's going through. One of the more interesting things, and I think I spoke about it last month, the introduction of a new term called educational pods. This is where parents get together with other parents in the community, hire a teacher because government schools aren't open, and they pretend to do education through an online program, which is really a couple of hours a day, no testing, no real assistance to the kids, no idea as to whether it's successful or not. And so the parents seeing this have decided they need a teacher. So they hire a teacher, and now the governor's office is threatening all these education pods with fines and lawsuits because of AB 5. And AB 5, if you remember, is the bill that kills hundreds of thousands of California jobs, that people are no longer able to be consultants. They're no longer able to be self-employed, that they have to work for a corporation, get full benefits, work full time. And of course, that's not going to happen. We now see that local newspapers, which used to use stringers and high school and college kids to write stories on a story-by-story basis, they're being stopped. Local newspapers are going to be closed down because they won't have the reporters to report them. But now the big story is that education by educational pods is going to be closed down if the governor has any way to do that. He's planning to do it based on AB 5. Another reason we need to recall the governor. Literally, I'm not sure whether the virus or Governor Newsom with AB 5 has killed more jobs in the state of California. And I think AB 5 has killed more jobs than the virus. So we have the virus teams going on by the governor. So not only are they going to start filing suits against these teachers who are just teaching 5 or 6 kids at a time, face to face in somebody's home, now they're going after pastors. I live, as some of you know, in Ventura County. I live in Simi Valley. Over the hill from where I live is a city of Thousand Oaks with a community called Newbury Park. And we have a large church in Newbury Park called Godspeak Calvary Church, led by Pastor Rob McCoy. And he's had in-person services for several weeks now at his church in Newbury Park. 2 days ago, he was served with a lawsuit to stop him from having these. And the lawsuit not only names him, but 1,000 John Does. And the people who attended, as the government finds out who they are going to be sued for, of all crimes, for attending church services on a Sunday morning. That's how bad the state of California has become. This is what happens in totalitarian nations. When they stop the pastors, they stop the congregants, they close the churches, and Rob McCoy is not only facing the lawsuit, but it's been discussed at by the Sheriff's Department and the Health Department. With the Health Department pushing it, they want to file criminal charges against Pastor McCoy. Full disclosure, Rob is a good friend of mine, great guy, solid conservative, but he's a Christian believer, and he believes as a Christian and as a pastor, he's supposed to hold his services with as many people as possible and to convert those who have not been converted. He's doing a great job at his church, and the government wants to close him down. And so the Health Department is forcing the Sheriff's Department to file criminal complaints against Rob and the congregants, and it's going to be a massive disaster. And you'll see a great rebellion here in Ventura County. But while I'm mentioning Ventura County, just across the border from us, you have LA County in a community called Sunland. There's a mega church in Sunland run by Pastor John MacArthur, and the health department and the sheriff of the district attorney of LA County, based on the health department, is about to file suit against him. And his church normally has on a Sunday about 3,000 people. I think he has 3 different services to get everybody in. And it's a long, old-time church. It's something like 72 years old. It's been around a long time and well-known, well-established. They also established Master's College, a Christian college up in the Santa Clarita Valley as part of their mission. Great school, great academics, great values and principles. And now they want to put MacArthur in jail as well. And isn't it interesting? If you sell drugs on the street, you don't go to jail. If you've been a rapist or a murderer, Newsom will allow you out of jail. But under the orders of the state of California, Governor Newsom wants people who preach the gospel to go to jail instead. There's just something wrong with a system that allows this, which is one of the reasons I'm taking the lead as chief consultant of the Recall Gavin Newsom campaign. We need to get rid of this tyrant who serves as governor of the state of California. It was mentioned by Jan that there are 9 bills, housing bills, that are coming up shortly for a vote. I put those 9 bills in my newsletter the other day. But here's the bottom line: what all these bills have in common. So you live in Los Gatos, you live in Los Altos, you live in San Jose, I live in Simi Valley, I have friends down in San Diego, we all have friends in Fresno. When these bills are passed and somebody wants to build a housing project in our community, you will not be allowed to go to City Hall to complain. City Hall won't be allowed to take your complaint. There'll be no planning commissions to listen to you, and the city council won't be able to vote for the project yay or nay. You literally will have to go to Sacramento to speak to a bureaucrat who has probably never been to your community, to your city, and never will, doesn't live there, and they will make the decision. In other words, your local zoning and permitting process will have been taken out of the hands of the city council. Now, I heard you say that you're going to have Susan Kirsch as a speaker. She's a friend of mine. She's written for my newsletter periodically. She's an expert on this subject. I urge you all to listen to her and get your friends to listen to her, because the basis of government, the absolute basis that we in the cities can rule ourselves, are being destroyed. If you can't go to the church of your choice, if your kids can't get an education, if you can't determine whether a 300 unit project in the middle of a residential area is good or bad, there's something wrong with government, and we no longer have a free government. We have a government that controls us, and it doesn't matter who you elect in November, even if they're good people running for city council or mayor, because they won't have the ability to make the local decisions that are needed. We are on the cusp of a totalitarian government in the state of California. And the bigger problem for them is that they don't have the money to be tyrants. So what they're doing is they are sending agents from 6 different agencies, alcohol beverage control, restaurants, health departments, those who control the hair salons and barbershops, and they are forcing, going in there saying, you'll lose your license if you stay open. Then they send in the health department and the sheriff's department of your county to close you down. And they're working in concert now. And it's going to be a major movement by the governor to fully close down the state of California. The rest of the story is that they don't have the money to pay for all this. And that's where the problem comes in for them. The governor created a budget that he signed off on that has a $54 billion deficit. And he gets it to 54, not 68, by including $14 billion from the federal government that President Trump has made clear is not going to go to the state of California, that he's not going to pay for the mismanagement and the corruption of state governments and help them pave the way for more corruption and mismanagement. So that money's not there. How big is $54 billion? It's larger than the budget of 20 different states of the state of, in the United States. That's how big that budget deficit is. We are in financial trouble, but there's good news. The City of Los Angeles School District, LAUSD, is putting a $7 billion bond, which means $14 billion when you include the interest charges on it, that they want to modernize the schools. The schools aren't open. They don't know how many students are going to return. They want to put people in debt by $14 billion in total over a period of 30 years. They don't know what education is going to look like then. It won't be brick and mortar. It'll be more like the education pods because people will take their kids out of the government schools or they'll move out of the state of California. And so they want to spend that type of money. District after district in the state over the next week or so are going to be making the decision whether or not to put bond measures, partial tax measures, or other tax increases on the ballot to help the schools. Prop 15 on the ballot, which is the split roll, is allegedly the money's going to the schools. What schools? If they're not opening the schools, if the teachers are not going to teach, if they're saying you have to get rid of charter schools and give money to illegal alien families, have universal health care, defund the cops, the teachers unions have stopped being an education function. They've become an arm of the Democrat Party and the socialist wing of the Democrat Party. Imagine our teachers who are extorting us. Your kids won't get an education unless you make the streets unsafe. That's the trade-off they want. Don't understand it, but that's what they're doing. So this will give you an idea as to where we are in state government. Expect the next 30 days to be worse than any 30 days we've had so far since the beginning of the year. As the several hundred bills go through the legislature, we're going to see a lot of bills that really harm us. There's one bill that's a total disaster. And it only takes a 2/3 vote of the legislature, and the Democrats have that in the Assembly and State Senate, to raise income taxes. And they're going to force the wealthy out of the state of California by raising their taxes by between 1% and 3%. It's going to be a total disaster. There's no reason for the wealthy to stay in California, since with that, if that passes, the wealthy people in California, including federal taxes, will pay between 54 and 57% of their income in taxes. So why stay in California? You go to Texas and you'll save yourself 13 to 16% just by going to a state that has no income tax. And if you have a business, it has no corporate income tax, so the corporations don't have to pay it out, which allows you to pay more to your workers, expand your business, things you can't do in the state of California. And so that's where we are today, beginning of August of 2020. It's not a pretty picture. As my good friend Tom Del Beccaro says, he introduces me sometimes as Dr. Doom and Gloom. I'd like to give you a happy face and say things are wonderful, but they're not. But you have to, if we're going to change things, we have to know what the problems are. Like an addict, the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. And we know we have a problem. Now we have to have the state do it. And we do that through the recall movement. If you go to recallgavin2020.com, download a petition, you'll be able to get the attention of the people of California and the Democrat leadership that we've had enough. Anyway, that's what my report is for you today. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you have for the next 15 to 20 minutes, if that's as long as you have questions. So Wendy, back to you.
We have tons of questions for you today. But the first one is, Jan wanted to know, actually, Jan, ask him your question.
Okay, one of the original questions we had, so much happens in a week or 2 weeks, right? Many of us were drawn to Laura Ingram's program. Many of us watch it. And there, splashed across the screen, is this information about the Lincoln Project. And then I obviously noted that one of those people on the Lincoln Project is Mike Madrid, which, I've been around for a while. I'm like, oh, he's that consultant to CAGOP that heard him talk, and now I hear he's a delegate to the RNC convention. So why don't you tell us why that is troubling?
Well, I've written about the Lincoln Project. Let me give you some background. First of all, he is not a delegate to the RNC convention, but he is a CRP delegate, and he tells people that as a CRP delegate, he supports Joe Biden for president and wants 7 U.S. senators, Republicans, to be defeated, including Susan Collins, who is a Republican, but not exactly a conservative Republican, but he wants her defeated as well among the 7. So there are at least 3 people, Mike Madrid, Luis Alvarado, and Ben Avey, who are CRP delegates, who are Lincoln Project founders. A gentleman by the name of Carl Brickey from the Sacramento area filed charges against all 3 of them, violations of the state bylaws, CRP bylaws, and they've been served already. They have 30 days to answer the question, are you a Biden supporter, which is in violation of the bylaws? And as part of the complaint that Brickey filed, had all these tapes, videos, newspaper articles where they admit it, Facebook pages, Twitter pages where they admit it. So it's not a question. But here's the bigger problem. Why did it take a delegate, Carl Brickey, to file the complaints when since last November it was known publicly that all 3 were against Trump? And as it became apparent that Biden was going to be the nominee, that they were supporting Biden for president, why didn't the chair of the state party, who is friends with these people, if you were at the last convention that we actually had in February of 2019, they were collecting proxies on her behalf. And Jessica has worked directly with Mike Madrid for years, with Luis Alvarado for years. She knows this. As our chair, it was her responsibility to bring the charges and didn't. Now the question is, are they going to slow walk it till after the November election? And why is that important? Because that would allow, through the November election, members of the California Republican Party oppose Donald Trump. And that will go nationwide. Is that what we want for our party to be seen? Now, that's not the worst part, Jan, because you didn't know this maybe until last night when I broke the story. I bet you're planning to go to the February 2021 convention, right?
Well, if they have it.
They're not.
Okay.
They are looking at having us vote by ballot and not a secret ballot anymore. You have to sign your name. If you looked at the initiative ballot, you have to sign your name on the ballot. So how you vote on the initiatives is no secret. Your name's right there on the ballot. So they've taken away secret ballots. They've taken away conventions. They haven't registered voters. They allow openly pro-Biden people in there. If you remember, 2 years ago when I started running for chair for 2019, I said the goal was for them to close down the Republican Party. And don't give me words. I look at your actions. When you don't have conventions, when you have pro-Biden people there, you don't register voters. Since from 2016 to 2020, the Republican Party has lost a total spread of 800,000 voters between the Democrats and Republicans. And from 2016 to 2020, there are 800,000 more Democrat registrants than voters, than Republicans. That means that we didn't do any voter registration. We know that. And we've closed down the Republican Party. So if we're going to do something, we're going to have to do it from the grassroots, with or without the party, because what they're doing is harmful. One last thing. As you may know, the state Republican Party endorses candidates for office. The process is very simple. If you're if you're running for assembly, state senator, or Congress, you have to get the endorsement of the county central committees in your district, and it has to be unanimous. And then it goes to the state party, and then the state party endorses the candidate for assembly, state senate, and Congress. So they did that back in January and February. They started it actually last September, the endorsement process. Now they are unendorsing candidates, and here's how they do it. So Jan, you're a candidate for Congress from your district, and next thing you know, you get an email from Wendy, and she says, Jan, do you know they took away your endorsement last night? They literally have taken away endorsements for candidates for Congress, and they tried to take away the endorsement of a lady running for state senate on 10 to 12 hours notice of the board, but never telling the person who's they're taking the endorsement away from, hey, we're going to have a hearing and we're going to take away your endorsement, but you're not allowed to speak on your own behalf. And by the way, we're not even going to tell you we're doing it until after the fact. And thank God that Harmeet Dillon stopped the unendorsement of a lady by the name of Hazelton out of San Bernardino running for the state senate, because Harmeet in the meeting said, now wait a minute, we've taken away all these endorsements with no notice to the candidates. The board itself has only had less than 10 hours notice as to taking away these things. The people aren't allowed to defend themselves. This is just wrong. So she was able to stop temporarily the unendorsement of Hazelton, who's a wonderful lady. I've spoken to her, good, solid conservative. Now we have, but that's not the worst part. There's 5 more Republican candidates for Congress. Well, 4 more Republican candidates for Congress, 1 more for state senate that they want to unendorse. And because we've exposed this, they may have to stop it. Because on one hand, they're exposing, they are taking away endorsement of conservatives running as Republican nominees. On the other hand, she has been protecting pro-Biden people inside the Republican Party. That's the leadership we have.
And so I just have to throw this out. Are you throwing your hat in the ring to run for chair in next year?
As somebody once said, never say never. I'm not a General Sherman who says if I win, I won't take it. You know, that story. But no, I'm not a candidate for chair. At this moment, I will tell you that a lot of people have asked me if I would do it again. They now realize all the things I said was going to happen to the party has happened. And the party's in even worse shape than I could have imagined. I would never have dreamed they would protect pro-Biden people inside the Republican Party. That's something I couldn't even fathom to be allowed. And so no, at this point I'm not. But as you know, I'm active in a lot of things around the state, and we'll see what happens later on. But right now, I just want to make sure we have a Republican Party that represents Republicans, not the Biden wing of the Republican Party.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. I think that most of us have no clue about what's going on. Okay, so and we wonder why the California Republican Party is so ineffective in California. So moving on, let me just ask a follow-up question from Ari. Is that okay, Wendy? And Ari asked, to best help conservative candidates this election cycle, is it better to focus on voter education and turnout in the battleground states to help with Trump's re-election, or to work on California county and state races, or both equally? What is your input?
We are good Republicans, good conservatives. We could chew chew gum and walk at the same time. So I would suggest we do two things. One, we help the Trump campaign with phone calls to the swing states, working through a program that you know about, Trump Talk, and which is set up for that by the campaign. And second, I would start working on candidates for city council, school board, and local races. It's important that we elect people at the local level. The legislative races are pretty much determined already, except for a few targeted races that we can keep, that we could win. And the state party and the National Congressional Committee and the caucuses are working on those. But imagine if we could elect a city council member in Los Gatos. What if we could do it in Cupertino? Let's get people elected to local office so we could build our base for the future. And that's where it's at. So I think we could do both. You hear me once a month talk about state stuff. You read my newsletter and all. What you don't know is that I'm running the campaign for the mayor of Simi Valley for his reelection. He's running against a regressive run by the AOC wing of the Democrat Party. I'm running a campaign for a city councilwoman who is running against a regressive, and I'm running a campaign for an open seat on the school board against a regressive. And I'm running campaigns up and down the state like this, but these three are so important to me personally because they're my hometown of Simi Valley. But I'm doing this sort of stuff all over the state among all the other projects that I'm working on. And if you have candidates that are interested in running that want help, I'd be very happy to provide them with a political plan for free, to provide them with the ability to implement that plan. Zoom works all over, and a candidate for city council in Cupertino is within moments away, thanks to electrons, with me helping them via Zoom or conference call, whatever method is needed. But we need to look at the local level. So I'm involved in a lot of stuff around the state, as well as the recall Gavin Newsom.
You're a little busy.
Thank you.
We love it.
I have at 11 o'clock today another Zoom call that's going to last at 12, and then I have a Zoom call at 12:15. So
we just have a couple more precious minutes here.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, question from James. James wants to know, are legislators finally putting the brakes on the shutdown? I've seen reports on Senate Concurrent Resolution 93, which will begin to limit the one-person rule in California by officially ending the state of emergency. What do you know about that? I read a little about that.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen?
No, governor has control of his party. The legislature can complain as they have, most privately, some publicly, like State Senator Holly Mitchell. But when push comes to shove, they don't want to harm the governor. They'd rather harm the people. And so while there are these resolutions out there, riders to bills, just not going to happen, sadly. We have one-person rule, and if I was to go to my poli-sci textbooks, that's called dictatorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, we have a question that I've actually been curious about myself. Do you think COVID is going to go away on November 4th?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes.
That is so awful.
But the problem we have is starting either next week or the week after, and I've been notified by Kaiser. I'm part of Kaiser's medical system, and friends have been advised by their doctors. Starting in a week or two, the flu vaccine is going to be available, and they're going to start doing that. And then we have the words of Gavin Newsom, and he said he won't open up the schools, he won't open up the state of California until there is a vaccine. So on one hand, we need the vaccine, and the reports as late as this morning say the first vaccine should be available in October. Here's the problem. First of all, Congress will have to pass a bill, as they did in 1976 when we had the first swine flu, and the pharmaceuticals said we can't give these out without protection from liability because they've not been tested well enough. And Congress did that. So is Congress going to give a pass on liability to these pharmaceutical companies that have developed in such a quick time, record time, vaccines that haven't been totally proven? Second, as we all know, there's a group of people, a large group here in California, who don't trust vaccinations anyway, and they won't be vaccinated. So what does that mean to schools? Well, Gavin Newsom's going to say, if you don't have your child vaccinated, two things are going to happen. One, no school for the kid. Two, what type of cigarettes do you smoke? Because you're going to need them in jail. They're going to start arresting parents for not vaccinating the kids as a health matter to general society. And it's going to be a bigger mess than we have today. And that's where we're headed on this. And the governor made it clear 2-3 weeks ago that he doesn't expect California to open up until June of 2021 at the earliest.
Wow.
That's where we're at.
Oh, that's sad. Jen, are you finding something out there?
Okay. All right. This is an interesting one. I mean, there's so many. It says, what are the facts behind Newsom's $3.7 million gift of a home and his failure to pay taxes on it? Corruption?
So, a corporation, a nonprofit corporation run by his brother-in-law, bought a house, gave it to the governor. The governor then took out a equity loan on the house of $2.7 million and put it in his pocket, which means he made $2.7 million without having to pay taxes on it. The same guy that wants your taxes to go up doesn't want to pay taxes on his own profits. So that's the bottom line. Sadly, everything that was done was legal. It may be immoral, may be unethical, but they followed the tax codes, and this is how you use the tax codes to get around the legalities.
Oh, that is pathetic. Okay, James writes, regarding the criminalization of Christian worship, check out this note from Nevada. The Nevada governor banned church services, but casinos can operate at 50% capacity. So we're going to start worshiping in a casino.
I worship at Walmart.
That works too. Oh, that is pathetic.
But that's the whole thing. You know, they allow you to go to Walmart or Costco or to casinos in Nevada, and but they won't allow you to go to church. When I go to Walmart, it's crowded, a lot of people there. And so what's the difference between a lot of people, including the employees, being there for an hour or so shopping or doing their work, versus people going to a church for an hour's service? I don't know the difference. Is Walmart or Costco or Target that much cleaner and safer than a church?
I don't think so.
It is just doesn't make it. But you don't have to make sense when you're trying to close down a society. You can have all the hypocrisy you want and get away with it because the media is playing the game. They are backing the totalitarian nature. If you read my newsletter, you know, I call the governor the supreme leader. I mean, I can't tell the difference between him, except for his weight. I can't tell the difference between him and the head of North Korea.
One's a little bit taller.
So I think we can do one more question. I know you've got to get on another call. So Steve, we so appreciate you. Could you do one more question?
Oh, yeah, I have 6 more minutes.
Okay. It says, from Nadia, are we going to have fair elections regarding the ballot measures this fall? In other words, since we have not had an honest election in California in 10 years, can we even hope to prevail on these issues?
I think we will prevail even with the corruption on the ballot issues. I think that's it. But we're going to lose Assembly and Senate seats because of the corruption. And we won't pick up the congressional seats that we should because of the corruption. I did a story yesterday, I think it was, in Clark County, Nevada, in the primary. They sent out 223,000 ballots that were undeliverable just in that one county, which is Las Vegas. That's Clark County. California has a minimum of 485,000 people that are dead or have moved. They have another 25,000 people that are duplicates. So Wendy, you're a voter in Santa Clara County, that's great. But if you used to live in Temecula down in Riverside County, you could vote there too. And so there's 25,000 have been identified so far as duplicative. Over 500,000 ballots will go out to people who shouldn't get them. Who knows what's going to happen to those ballots?
In Santa Clara County, sorry, in the last election, they have an entire room full of ballots that were returned by USPS. I'm really curious about how many USPS let through.
Well, the bigger question is why do they send them to people who've been dead for so long? Fresno County is a great county. I love it. They have, trying to think of the number now, but they have over 100 people who are registered to vote who were born and get ballots who were born in the year 1860. And they're getting ballots. And some of them have voted recently. The air must be really good in Fresno if you can live that long.
I saw that actually when Jan and I were working on a campaign for a school district. There was was she 90 or 106, I think it was?
Well, there's some like 120-year-olds.
She hadn't missed an election in the past 20 years.
They're 160 years old now, and they're still getting ballots.
And still voting. They're still voting.
And they're voting in the Alvarado School District. Amazing place to live.
And they're registered Democrat.
Yeah, well, that's as corrupt as they come. The FBI needs to set up an office in that district to get all the crooks. But that'll give you an idea of how bad it is. And Nadia's, I think it was Nadia who asked the question, right? We haven't had an honest election in California in at least 10 years, if not more. We have too many illegal aliens registered to vote, and with the DMV registering people, the DMV admitted that they erroneously registered 153,000 people. Do you think the Secretary of State took those names off?
Of course not.
We don't know. He won't tell us. He won't allow an audit, which is federally mandated under the Voter Choice Act, the Motor Voter Act, I should say, passed by Congress. He's mandated to do an audit, and he won't do an audit because we don't know how many millions are illegally on the ballot. But LA County, they have a really patriotic group of people. 112% of the people eligible to be registered are registered in LA County. San Francisco is patriotic. They have 106% of those eligible to vote registered to vote. We have 7 counties over 100% registered to vote.
I think Santa Clara County is about 110. So.
Yeah, we're not quite as patriotic. I think we only have, what was it, 102% or something like that.
Well, you got to do better.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, Steve, always a pleasure to have you. It's quite educational, and we'll hope you're come back again sometime. But as you said last time, Steve, Hey, listen, if all people do is just come and listen and go, oh my gosh, and do nothing, this is all a waste of your time, my time, and Wendy's time. So people out there are things you can do. If you don't know what to do, we can connect you with Trump Talk or Sidekick calling, and we can help you get involved in local races. So.
And the first thing you can do is educate yourself, and don't forget that capoliticalreview.com. Make sure you sign up so you can learn all about stuff.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you today.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate it. Take care.
Next Friday, 6 to 9. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody. We've recorded this, and if you missed it or you only could come to the very beginning or the very end, it's recorded. It will be on our website. We have a YouTube channel that has almost every one of our past meetings, except for the one that the person who did it didn't want to be recorded. So you can read them all. You can find them on our website. You can find everyone that Steve Frank participated in. And especially go back and listen to Josh Philippe. That was in July, Wednesday in July. Oh, you have to listen to that several times to really get all the
Chinese Communist Party and how evil and insidious they are.
And thank God for Donald Trump. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, this whole thing about the Chinese Communist Party. And hey, for you, they're still here. We're gonna have Trevor Loudon. If you know who he is, he's a columnist for the Epoch Times. Wrote lots of books, and including Reds, and he can tell you every member of the Congress that is a communist backed by communists. In fact, he said the only person who was running, of all those Democrats that were running, the only one who didn't have communist, it's called what? The Socialist Democratic Group sponsor them was Bloomberg. Okay. How did Joe Biden go from being a member of the city council to a U.S. senator representing Pennsylvania in one election? Okay.
It takes money.
He displaced a popular U.S. senator in Pennsylvania. Where did that money come from? Hello?
Scary.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We'll say goodbye
next week, hopefully, for Nix the 9.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.